California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Eric Bauman again. He is the chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, also vice chair of the California Democratic Party. Recently, President Obama offered his 7th State of the Union. Generally speaking, the reviews were quite good. What's your take on that? The fact that for his 7th State of the Union, a lot of plaudits for him.
It's called freedom. Being freed of the yoke of facing the voters again, being willing to take on all of the opposition straight up, heads on, because he never faces election again. And that enabled him to deliver a positive, populist, progressive agenda. Catch that 3 Ps. That,
exactly.
That alliterative is one that I have the copyright on.
Exactly.
Don't use it.
I won't. I promise. At the same time, a lot of populist agenda items in that speech, and I'm wondering, is that the best approach, given that he faces for the first time a purely Republican Congress in leadership?
I think, as you and I have discussed in the past, this last 2 years of his presidency, he is going to govern primarily by veto and executive order. The Republicans in the House and the Senate have made clear they have no interest in compromise, that they're not even making soft words to make it sound like they're willing to compromise. I think he laid out the agenda as he believes is best. He laid out a path to help the middle class become more secure, more successful, more vibrant, to enable kids to get to school, to enable those who are wealthiest to help those who are struggling to have a better future. Because when you start to lift some people's boats, everybody's boats rise.
As the argument goes, there was also a few historic statements in his speech. He specifically mentioned anti-Semitism. We know there is rising anti-Semitism in Europe. We know about the attacks in Paris, in Brussels. What do you make of the fact that he chose to specifically talk about that canard that we so often hear?
Well, first of all, I think there is this sort of ever-present attack that comes from the right that claims he's anti-Israel and he's not been fully supportive of Jews. 71% of Jewish voters didn't feel that way and voted for his reelection. But that continues to be out there, and I think it was important that he put it out there. The level of anti-Semitism that we're seeing in Europe is at historic levels. Right. The number of Jews who are leaving France and even to some extent the United Kingdom and going to Israel and coming to America for safety reasons is reaching an all-time high. So I think it was important for him to call people's attention. We're watching, we see what's going on, we know what's going on, and that America stands ready to help, an integral part of our society and stand up in the face of that discrimination.
At the same time, there wasn't a lot of discussion about the underlying threats and why we face those underlying threats. ISIS, ISIL, a few mentions. We didn't see a huge shout out to what happened in Paris recently. We know there was some criticism because a senior level administration official did not go to Paris, which the administration later acknowledged was a mistake. So what do you make of that decision not to highlight the underlying causes more strongly?
I think, although he did certainly talk about ISIS and ask for the freedom to be able to, and said we would be combating them in all countries where they're active, along with Al-Qaeda. But his speech was largely philosophic and largely domestic. And truth be told, most Americans right now are concerned about home, are concerned about how we make tomorrow better, how we restore the American dream. Because the economy, when it tanked as he became president, and the work that he had to do to recover from the Bush economy was so intense, and yet people still are struggling. It's just slowly coming back.
As you surely remember, when President Reagan held the Oval Office, he did not utter the words HIV or AIDS.
Right.
3 presidents later, did I get that number right? 4 presidents later, President Obama, during his State of the Union speech, uttered the word transgender. Many see that as quite historic. What do you make of that?
Well, look, in his speech, he referred to the fact that today 35 states, plus the District of Columbia, same-sex marriage is legal. And he talked about the evolution, the change that has occurred so quickly just during the time of his presidency. And transgender Americans are the newest part of our society to come out of the shadows and to ask for help and protection. Because all across America, we have seen violence directed at transgender people, and nobody has wanted to talk about it. And it's been hard to legislate protections. So
Was it wise, if I may ask, to bring up that community in that there is no doubt that views are shifting toward acceptance of LGBT? I don't know.
Well, as you know, in California, we had a big struggle over a piece of legislation that passed, and Governor Brown signed into law that affected restrooms in schools. Conservatives on the right tried to pass a referendum that would have repealed it. They were not successful in gathering the signatures. I think one of the good things that happens as our world evolves, as people get to know each other, old stereotypes break down. And I remember when President Clinton stood in that very spot and used the word gay for the first time. January 1997. And I remember my eyes flooding with tears, thinking how many 13 and 14-year-old kids who lived in the shadow, who were embarrassed, who were afraid, got to hear the President of the United States say it was wrong to discriminate against their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. I think that was that same moment.
Not since 1992 has California seen an open Senate seat, but we will see one in 2016. Barbara Boxer, a progressive icon, has announced she is not running for re-election, and people are already lining up to take her seat. We know Attorney General Kamala Harris has announced. We know that former Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa is looking, billionaire Tom Steyer is looking, Republican Assemblyman Rocky Chavez is looking. Who knows who else is looking? What do you make of this, sir?
Well, first of all, for Democrats, this marks a transition in leadership. We're literally watching a generational change occur. We're going to see it in the Senate race. We're going to see it in the governor's race. Literally the next generation of leaders. I think that, I hate to say first and second tier, but with Harris, Villaraigosa, and Steyer, all virtually in the race at this point. And then there's another level of people who are talking about it. Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez, Congressman Javier Becerra, Congressman John Garamendi, and others. And so we may see the most robust discussion about the United States Senate and representing California's values that we've seen in a long time.
Let's talk about Rocky Chavez, though. I know Rocky. I've interviewed him frequently. A Republican from the San Diego County area, North County. He's Latino. He's a military man. Fairly moderate record. Do you think he could make some noise? Yes, this is a blue state, but do you think that he's someone that should be taken seriously?
One of the things that I always love about the media, Brad, is they look for that horse race. Look, he's a very attractive candidate for Republicans, probably their most attractive candidate. He will not and cannot win this race. California is not going to elect a Republican. Do you realize we just swept, in the worst turnout year in California history, Democrats swept every statewide office.
As the rest of the nation was kicking out Democratic incumbents left, right, and center.
You had to bring that up?
It's true. And when the Republicans were gaining seats in the House, every single close House contest in our state went Democratic.
And on a similar note to this, the last statewide Republican, the appointed lieutenant governor,
Abel Maldonado.
Attempted to get elected statewide. He also was a moderate. He also had a good record.
Latino.
Also was Latino, and also couldn't win.
So what happens with the Republican Party? I know you're on the other side, but where do they go from here?
I think that under Jim Brulte's leadership, the Republican Party in California is taking a look at itself. It's trying to break away from some of its more rigid.
They did well in the Sacramento races.
Trying to break away from their more rigid views, trying to be more diverse, to recognize California.
And he is Eric Bauman. He'll be back. My name is Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.